Saguaro boy.
I have returned
Chris is back in town, and
from my vacation.
we've both downloaded and been playing State of Decay.
Yes.
And so I've already kind of given my initial reaction and my initial gameplay experience, but
Which I know what your initial reaction was, and it was pretty much exactly on par with what I thought of the
so
initial.
that's the end of the review.
Yeah, yeah.
There are some bug issues with this game.
That have been out since the release. Or
Yeah.
that have been on it since the release.
Some are graphical and easy to overlook, but there's some that aren't necessarily game-breaking, but
It is frustrating.
really frustrating. The main one is something with infestations, where if you don't address zombie infestations across the entire game map, that your survivors start disappearing.
And it constantly tells you there's too many infestations nearby, even though there might not be any nearby.
Yeah, and this is supposed to happen, but only if they're near your base.
Yeah.
But if they're anywhere on the map, this is something that I've experienced where my population cut in half, basically. In the time it took me to go across the street to a gas station and then come back in the game, my population almost cut completely in half, and it's been dropping since then.
That's terrible. Mine hasn't been that bad, so I've been pretty happy so far.
All of what we're going to say is going to be kind of ignoring that, I guess.
Well, because the patch just came out today.
The patch just came out, but we're hearing it might have some problems still. We're going to review it under the assumption that these bugs are fixed. It's obviously a different story if they're not. Anyways, State of Decay is an Xbox Live arcade game that's going to allegedly be coming to the PC eventually, but there's no date set for that. It's made by Undead Labs, which is a new studio that's based in Washington, founded by some veterans of the gaming industry. The gist of the game, which we probably should explain, is it's an open world game, and there's some missions that kind of guide you along the way, like a main plot arc, and then there's a lot of side stuff. But you have a base of survivors, and depending on how many you have, you use resources every day in game. So you have to go out, and there's a finite amount of resources in the world. So if you completely loot a house, it's empty forever, and it X's it off on your map.
And there's 5 types of resources. There's ammo, fuel, food, medicine,
and
building materials.
Yeah.
So 5 main materials that you have to gather.
And there's
throughout the game.
There's kind of 2 item categories, I guess. There's ones that you just put in your backpack, which has a limited amount of space.
And those are like you can gather medicines and stuff for like healing yourself. There's snacks for restoring energy, weapons, guns, stuff like that. Extra ammo.
But then there's those resources, which are a different category, and those are for your base.
And those go in a rucksack.
Yeah, so there's an interesting tension that they create where you'll go into, like, let's say you go to a construction site and you find a construction resource, a construction materials resource. You'll loot it, and it puts it in a big rucksack on your bag, but one person can only carry one rucksack, which isn't one resource. It's usually, depending on what type of resource, it's like 10 to 15, I would say. You can call other survivors to come scavenge if you're at a place and there's more resources, instead of you having to make like 20 trips.
But that's frustrating because they have to run to you.
Which takes a while. They don't know how to use the cars or anything.
Yeah, and they get attacked a lot. So I usually don't even use scavengers.
I do, but only when it's close by. And, I mean, that's another thing that's sort of frustrating is I was under the impression that you'd be able to go to the base, talk to a couple people, and tell them, come with me, and then you could go in a little pack out to do missions. But the only way that happens is if you find survivors when you're out, and they'll kind of follow you until you take them back to the base.
I do that. I'm kind of a dick about that. Like, I'll find survivors, they'll be like, oh, take us back to your base. I'll be like, we have a couple stops to make first. You guys are going to watch me while I destroy
when you're with
stuff.
like 2 other people, it's noticeably easier.
Oh, way
They're
easier.
really helpful.
Yeah.
So you don't want to take them home, because once you take them home, then they just sit in your base, and you have to go fly solo again, which sucks. I don't know if that was a feature they just removed, or if they decided that they wanted to maintain the difficulty level, so they would disable that.
I wonder if there's a couple fold. Like, it makes the difficulty, it makes it harder. And also, in a real-world situation, obviously it's not really real-world, but in a situation like that, would you really want to risk your whole group or half your group going out on a scavenging mission and getting wiped out, or just send out 1 or 2 people?
You would still send more than 1.
Yeah, I agree.
It's basically... I mean, Chris and I talk about zombie games all the time, it's
And
kind
we
of...
had always talked about what our dream zombie game would be.
State of Decay was built up to kind of be like basically the zombie gamers...
Yeah.
Zombie gamer?
Zombie gamer. Just say it.
Trademark,
I'm copyright.
The zombie gamer.
Gamer?
The zombie gamer's like dream game where you can fortify a base, you can recruit other survivors, you can like kind of conquer territory, I guess. And
because
clear stuff.
Our dream was always like add elements of The Sims, Grand Theft Auto. We said Minecraft kind of because that was like kind of the base building
We like
aspect.
the construction element.
Being able to actually like gather materials and construct. So like we wanted a combination of quite a few different games, and they pretty well delivered.
There isn't a ton of plot. It's a pretty generic plot. There's some voice acting, which is pretty well done in my opinion.
The voice acting's good, but there are very few voice actors, which I actually hear that same thing for Skyrim, like Bethesda's notorious for using.
There's not a ton.
Yeah, but this, it's like one of the problems I had is even my wife noticed that they repeat the lines.
Some of the survivors look the same too.
The survivors look the same.
There was this part where I was playing, I want to say his name was like Adam or something, and I go to one of the other bases that's not part of your group, but it's kind of out at like a truck stop or whatever.
Survivor?
There's two other guys that looked just like me. They had the same facial structure and the same haircut, and the three of us are standing next to each other, and they're all talking, and I was like, that's weird.
So their same voices, the lines, though, they repeat the lines over, and like every time you return to base, there's like only a small selection of lines they use when you're returning to base, and they repeat them over and over.
We'll crack open a cold one for you.
Yeah.
We'll crack open a cold one for you.
Or I brought you a pony, but it tried to eat me, so I shot it in the head. Like,
and they all say that line of dialogue.
They all say it.
Which kind of confused me, because if you had the different voice actors and you're going to use the file size to record three different people saying it, why wouldn't you record three different lines instead of three people saying the same line? Overall, kind of controls and the gameplay and everything was pretty solid.
Yeah.
The cars aren't the like fanciest control system in the world, but I don't think it needs to be.
No, because I pretty much, it's not like I get a rush from like racing around the town. I literally use it for transportation or mowing over zombies. Like that's all I use them for.
And because they get damaged so easily and early on you don't have a means to repair them, you're kind of delicate about how you use the cars. Overall, the general like flow of the game is fun. There's infestations where a certain house will get infested with zombies.
Which, are those supposed to pop up on your map and tell you, or do you have to find them?
It seems like it's 50-50.
Because that's the thing, is it says, oh, there's too many infestations nearby, and like none were on the map, but then I'll be driving by a random house and all of a sudden it pops up as an infestation. I have to literally see it.
I had the same thing happen. And if you don't clear those, then your survivors start going missing, which is part of the bug issue. Anyways, and then there's zombie hordes which roam the streets and are just large groups of zombies, which are terrifying
at first. Like
then
when you first
later,
start,
if you're driving a car, I just plow over them once or twice, and then they're cleared out. And then you can set up outposts. You can make any building. That's the other thing that's kind of cool, is basically every building in the entire game is enterable.
There have only been like two that I've come across that you can't. Which I'm sure there are more, but so far
there's three major towns, and there's lots of rural areas around them. And the one big town, Marshall.
Well,
it's pretty decent sized town. Yeah. So there's a lot to do.
Big enough that I don't run across it; I drive across.
Any of those buildings that you can go into, which is pretty much all the buildings, you can make into an outpost. And an outpost can be upgraded so that you plant, like, it auto plants mines on the streets around it. So if you make
IEDs almost.
Yeah, if you make like an outpost of a building that's like on a street corner and an intersection,
it covers all.
When the
those
zombie
streets.
hordes walk by, it basically auto kills them. Yeah. So it's in your interest around your base to build a bunch of outposts, and because at night, if you don't do that, the hordes attack your base and can kill people and stuff. The visuals in this game are passable. There's some stuff that looks better than other stuff. Overall, it's great. For a downloadable game, it's really good.
There's a few issues with like stuff going through walls. pop in.
I mentioned in my first impressions video that there's some weird pop-in issues and some screen tear stuff.
Some sliding around, like when you go to do a finishing move, you kind of slide into spot.
And sometimes if you do a finishing move lined up the right way, you'll do it through a wall and stuff, which is weird.
Yeah, I've been warped on one side of the fence to the other. Like, it's weird. But that stuff I can get over. It doesn't frustrate me.
The sound, I have no problems with the sound. It's not like a Rockstar soundtrack or anything.
Well, they don't really...
There's some ambient music at certain parts, like when you're in the... I think it's only in the first base, because I haven't had it happen in the second base, but...
No, I've had the music in the second base,
I haven't had it happen.
Yeah, it's weird, because it's
like this little like acoustic guitar thing.
I think the soundtrack is just a giant loop. I don't know, but yeah, I've had it happen at the second base.
Mostly it's just ambient
upbeat,
noises.
Actually.
Yeah.
The acoustic guitar makes you feel like, things are going to be okay.
Yeah, it's like a hopeful
And then
guitar.
one of your friends gets ripped apart.
Hey, you.
The menu systems, I think, are perfectly fine.
Not bad. If you go into the map or your like inventory, it doesn't pause the game, which is more realistic, because if you're digging through your backpack, you're not going to pause the game. If you're looking at your map, nothing's going to stop. But it can also be frustrating at times.
Another thing we forgot to mention is the stamina bar. When you run or jump or climb or anything,
swing anything,
it eats away at your stamina. And when you're playing the different characters, the more they do something, they can like level it up and have better stamina. If they are using a lot of melee weapons, they'll level up their like blunt weapons. You know, if they're shooting a lot, they'll level up firearms. Stamina, even though when it's maxed out, though, is still pretty sparse.
Yeah, it runs out.
You can get
fast.
into a situation where, like, skill-wise, if you're totally competent enough to handle fighting off a bunch of zombies, but then your stamina bar taps out and you're just, like, out of breath and getting swarmed, which is actually kind of cool.
Yeah.
I enjoy that. It makes it frustrating, but in a reasonable way, to where, like...
It makes it to where it feels more real. Like,
me as a player, I'm skilled enough to keep fighting off a ton of zombies, but the character wears out, so I have to be really cognizant of how I'm fighting stuff off.
It makes you think about how you need to approach a situation.
There's also a few special types of zombies.
Which are pretty frustrating.
There's not a ton of them. There's like... are they screamers?
Screamers are the ones without arms.
The infested houses have one or two of these usually, and they just like make you immobilized when they scream, so you kind of have to like shoot them from a distance.
But they also, they like, it's almost like it's so loud that you have to put your hands to your ears, but they also call in like hordes, and any surrounding zombies will come to them, so you can get yourself in trouble really quick if you don't take them out fast enough.
And then there's feral zombies.
Feral zombies are horrifying.
They're
not hard to beat.
I try to get them with cars when I can.
They're not hard to beat. But like I've heard, and it feels true, that edged weapons like the machetes and stuff don't work against them. But blunt weapons do. But like you,
they're basically like steroided out zombies. They fight pretty much the same as normal zombie, but they're way faster and stronger, and they take a lot of hits.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
And then there's the big ones, like the giant...
The big uns. Or they're also called juggernauts.
The first one that I ran into tore my Marcus in half, which was really depressing.
Good thing about those is they can't get inside houses. They're too big, so if you can get inside a building and then just shoot them from the doorway, you'll be fine. Don't hit them with a car, because it will destroy the vehicle with one hit.
Are there any other types?
There's the bloaters, or the
those fuckers.
Yeah, even
I
if
hit
you
one of those with my
car,
truck.
Yeah, and it like drags their
and they put this like diarrhea all over you, and you have to get out of the car because it burns you alive.
It kills you, and it makes your stamina go down. It's horrible. From the start, with all the things they promised, I'm happy overall with what they came out with. It's not exactly what they said it was going to be in the beginning, but some of the stuff they did made it better. Some of it probably hurt it a little bit, but obviously they have to go with what they can do with what they have.
Would you recommend it?
Yes, absolutely. I would absolutely recommend it to anyone that's even remotely into that genre, or wants a survival game. Like, I would highly recommend it, because for the money, it is very entertaining, and there is so much. Some of it gets monotonous, but it's entertaining, and it makes you want to play it.
For me, it's a kind of like unpolished diamond, I guess, of a game. Like it contains all the general elements in my dream zombie game, and some are more successful than others, but it definitely is rough around the edges, graphically and technically. The underlying concepts and gameplay elements are so strong and so appealing to me that I'm willing to overlook a lot of the things that in another game would really turn me off. But it's the closest that I've found to the zombie game that I want. So I'm, maybe when the patches come, it'll refine it a little more and stuff, and maybe, a month, 2 months from now, it's going to be really amazing. Or maybe they'll taper off and it'll just be as it is,
perfect.
which is fine. But I think the fact that it's gotten a lot of downloads and a really positive response right off the bat from kind of like a first-time nobody game studio, hopefully will guide some other studios into this direction to make similar games.
Yeah, maybe a big-time studio will decide to take a game and turn it into something like this.